Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the council meeting for the City and County Swansea. The first item on the agenda is going to be apologies for absence. If I can call on Mr Evans, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I have two apologies, one from Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams and the other from Councillor Erica Kirshner. Are there any others?
Councillor Jones. Mike Day. Okay, the next item is disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests. Can I call on Lucy Moore, please, to offer advice to councillors? Sorry, Terry.
Yeah. Item 10, housing revenue account, and item 12, housing revenue account as a council tenant.
Okay. We'll wait for Lucy to give the advice first, and then we'll take the declarations, okay? Thank you.
What she say?
Councillor Hennigan, can you put your mic off, please? Thank you.
Evening all. I will do the same as we did last council. We will discuss each agenda item in turn and then we'll declare any interest following that item. But the first one is in relation to agenda item 8 and 9, the medium-term financial plan and the revenue budget. So these are detailed financial reports and they may contain a number of personal interests. In particular, I would ask you to consider the following. Do any of the decisions affect any business or employment related to you? Any body to which you have been elected or appointed by the authority or of which you are a member, e.g. Port Health Authority or the Fire Authority, or your well-being or financial position or that of a close personal associate? If you are a member of a body referred to in the reports, you've been appointed to by the council, then you only need to declare a personal interest. So I will raise that at 8 and 9. Any to declare? Okay. It would be great if you could complete the forms in front of you accordingly. In relation to agenda item 10, you only have a personal interest if you have a council tenancy. Any interest to declare? Okay. In relation to agenda item 11, that's the capital budget and programme. Again, this report contains a number of issues that affect the council, so ask you to consider again, do any of those decisions affect any business or employment related to you, anybody to which you've been elected or appointed by the authority of which you are a member, or affect your well-being or financial position of yourself or anyone close and personal to you. In those reports, reference are made to schools. So therefore, if you are a governor, you need to declare a personal interest and I will take a block declaration for the same. So I'd be grateful if your interest could be declared. Got them? Okay. Agenda item 12, housing revenue account. Again, if you have a council tenancy, you only need to declare a personal interest. Councillor Anderson. Thank you. Agenda item 13, I do not anticipate any interests arising from this agenda item. Agenda 14, capital strategy. Again, I do not anticipate any interests arising on that agenda item. Agenda item 15. I do not consider that you have an interest in this agenda item just because you are paying council tax because you are within the majority. So again, no need to declare an interest. And then membership committees also do not need to declare an interest if you're being appointed to those committees. Sorry, Councillor Jones.
Community Council.
No need. No need. Yeah. In relation to the amendments for the budget that are coming forward, in relation to agenda item 9A, amendment 2, if you, a relative or any close associate are employed within the domiciliary care service area, it is advised that you declare a personal and prejudicial interest, and in such cases you will be required to leave the chamber when the matter is being discussed. Does anyone need to declare an interest at this stage? Yeah. Grateful, thank you.
Just.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. On the minute, sorry, going back to the minutes of the meeting on page 7, both myself and Councillor Richard Lewis had a personal and prejudicial interest for the Ospreys motion. So we did withdraw from the meeting. If that can just be amended, thank you.
Page 2.
Okay, we move on to the next item then, and that's the minutes to approve and sign, and they're on pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Okay, all in agreement? Okay, thank you. Then item 4 is the written responses to questions asked at the last ordinary meeting of council, for those for information only. Then we have my announcements. Okay, the first one, unfortunately, is condolences. It's with sadness that I ask council to reflect on the sudden death of Mike Jones, who was Education's Information Officer. Mike gave 28 years of service in Swansea within education as a talented and knowledgeable data officer, supporting governor training, data analysis, advice to schools and delivery of innovation in information management. Many councillors across the chamber will have known Mike for his work with schools, panels and committees over the years. Nobody understood data better than Mike. He set up a high bar on how to evaluate and compare education attainment and assess the vulnerability factors of learners. Mike's vast knowledge of Swansea schools was incredible. His work to develop new systems and data tools was pioneering, making Swansea the envy of all other local authorities. Tributes are poured in, reflecting Mike's immense talent and gentle, steady temperament. Mike made a big difference to education in Swansea and should be remembered for his influence, for his wealth of experience and unwavering support to schools. Our sincere condolences to Mike's family. Can I ask you all to stand as a mark of respect? Okay, thank you. The next item is International Women's Day, will be held on the 8th of March 2026. It's a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural and political achievements of women. The day also marks a call to action for accelerating gender equality. WD is not country, group or organisation specific. It is a movement powered by the collective efforts of all. I'd like to thank you for wearing purple tonight and to support and to mark the occasion. Thank you. The next item is Jeremy Parkhouse, who's Democratic Service Officer, will be retiring on the 31st of March in 2026. Jeremy started work with Swansea City Council in 1990, spending 2 years working with housing, benefits and community charge. He left in 1992 to study for his degree, which he duly got, but the allure of local government proved too much, and he returned to Swansea Council in 1995, where he has remained to this date. He's worked with the Democratic Service team, helping councillors, statutory co-opted members and officers patiently and professionally for over 32 years. I'd like to pass on my congratulations and hope good luck for the future for Jeremy. Okay, and the other one is, and not all of you will remember, but one of our ex-councillors, Nick Bradley, who's living in Dubai. Just to let you know, he is safe and sound out there, but he has been out on a rescue mission today, out to Oman. Okay, so thank you for that. That's the end of my announcement. No, I just thought I got another one. I got amendments to the corrections to the council summons, which is item 16, is the membership of committees. An amended report was circulated earlier today. And then the next is the announcements of the leader.
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. Just quickly from me, because I know we've got a lot on the agenda tonight, just to say we continue to be in correspondence with the WRU and other parties regarding the legal action. You know, members will be aware that we've agreed some steps that we are taking in trying to hold the WRU to account and scrutinise to ensure their process is fair, transparent and, more importantly, meets the needs of the public in Wales. Presiding Member, I was very pleased to read the outcome of the Senedd Committee's assessment this week, which was absolutely damning for the WRU, and I absolutely urge them to take that on board and to ensure that they follow the recommendations in that statement from the Senedd Committee. And again, I look forward to updated members again shortly once we have more to report in terms of the legal action. Thank you.
Councillor Holly.
You can get this thing on. Totally agree with the leader. I think the fact that the Welsh Government had turned around and the Select Committee have said that this is a discord between the public, the fans and the WRU is a damning statement entirely. And I think the way that we've acted has been in the best interests of the Ospreys and the whole region as well. And I hope that we have a very successful outcome, and well done.
Thank you, Councillor Holly. Okay, we now move on to the next item, which is public questions. I've got 5 people wishing to speak, and the first one is Mr. Alec Thraves, please.
I'm not a regular here. Alex Thraves, representing Swansea Trades Council and the Socialist Party. Comrades, the revenue budget report points out that there will be a 60 million net service budget increase for 2026-27, but this settlement is still not enough funding to prevent, as the report says, substantial savings, I call them cuts, of just under 13 million that need to be found to balance the books. So this year's budget settlement, handed down from a Labour government in Westminster and the Senedd, will once again result in Swansea's Labour Council demanding that Swansea residents and its council workforce pay the price for the cost of living crisis. We'll see another above-inflation council tax increase. We'll see higher costs for council services, £6 million worth of cuts in social services, and extra stress on council staff who are already struggling to provide our everyday services. This is what the council will be voting on today. This proposed budget is just a continuation of the past 15 years of Tory and Lib Dem cuts and austerity measures, which are now being implemented by Labour. And most worryingly, according to the budget report, future settlements are likely to be more challenging. The report recognises that the Council can continue to just kick the economic can down the road when it comments that, put simply and bluntly, past draws from general reserves and the use of earmarked reserves cannot be repeated as those routes are all but fully exhausted. That is a stark message coming from the officers. This could be a nightmare scenario for Swansea residents and council workers. So my question, as the council has consistently refused to consider the Trades Council and Socialist Party's demand for a legal, no-cuts, needs-led budget, what plan of action has the Labour-controlled council prepared to stop council services, jobs and the city of Swansea from future decimation? And I say that because after 16 years of cuts, that has rolled out the red carpet for reform with their anti-union and racist policies to pick up seats in the Senate and the council elections next year. So that's my question.
Councillor Stewart. Oh,
Mr. Thraves, thank you, Mr. Thraves. And again, can I begin by thanking you for again attending this evening? I know you are a regular attender at budget time and have done for many years, and I do applaud you for taking the time to read the budget and to come forward with your question. In terms of, let's start with where I agree with you. Certainly agree with you that we can't forget the fact that the Lib Dems were the co-authors of austerity together with the Tories in London, and they did impose that on the country, and we are still seeing the damage from the years of austerity in our public services. I'd also agree with you that, you know, the damage that austerity did give platforms to parties like Reform, which, as we are seeing across the country, do huge damage to local authorities and to services when they get in control. And again, I think it's incumbent upon all of us to continue to expose the chaos they cause when they're given the chance to run councils. In terms of the budget, though, that's where I'll disagree with you. As you quite rightly referenced, it's a £60 million gross investment in services, £47 million net investment, and that achieves a record investment in education at 240 million, record investment in care services at 208 million, and record investment in place-based services at 101.5 million. So that it is a budget which asks for £13 million worth of savings or additional income, because it's a mix of both. Where we talk about savings, if you delve into the detail of the books, you will see that some of the social services savings are linked primarily to the transformation of services, meaning we are stopping spending money in certain areas in order to spend more in others, to do social care a better way, have more prevention, and to ensure we reach the optimum model for supporting people in the best way that we possibly can. And I know Councillor Gibbard will say more on that later. But the other part of that 13 million are things where we're just keeping pace with inflation or below inflation in terms of the charges that we level on our services to ensure that we can continue to provide those services to the people of Swansea. So, you know, a legal no-cuts budget, as we've traded blows on before, is a bit of a fallacy, because if you went down that route, you potentially would do exactly what the warning is in the budget book that you referred to, because you would exhaust your reserves very quickly and you would end up with an unsustainable position. And just to say on reserves, we have the second highest reserves in Wales. We continue to replenish reserves every year, even though, as Mr. Smith advises us in his advice, there was a small draw from reserves. When we get to outturn, a few months later, we see that there's a surplus and more money is added to specific reserves in the council. So it's a bit of a washing machine where you take some out when you need it and you add it back in when you have it. And that's what we've been doing successfully for a number of years. And actually, the levels of reserves that we have now are significantly higher than they were a decade ago. So again, Mr. Thraves, thank you very much for the question. Again, we're very proud of the budget we're putting forward because it is record investment across all services.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Graves. Just a reminder, public questions is 10 minutes. I am going to be a little bit lenient because there's a number of questions coming in, but it will be monitored, okay? So the next is from Mr. Ben Golightly.
Hi, Ben Golightly from Disabled People Against Cuts and the Socialist Party. Councillors, shockingly, this budget says it contains no provision for increased cost and reduction in income due to welfare cuts. And councillors, if you think this budget is fit for your medium-term forecast or even for the next year, you're in for a shock, because this budget won't even be fit for the next month, when people newly unable to work due to disability will be more than £200 a month worse off, and there's far worse to come. And councillors, if I were you, I'd be furious with the UK government for leaving you in that position. But you can't say you weren't warned. Disabled People Against Cuts Cymru urged you to lift a finger against the disability cuts last year. You should have stood with us then, when, by the way, we helped defeat and delay several billions more in disability cuts. You've sat tight for 15 years and waited for a Labour government to save you. I think those hopes have been dashed and it's all downhill from here. This is the only relatively favourable year, and it's your last chance, really, to take a stand and campaign for the funding Swansea needs.
Excuse me, Mr. Golightly, you're not asking a question, you're making a statement, and there's no one near what I got in front of me. So can you get to your question, please? Thank you.
Nearly finished that. So my question is, will you vote no to this budget and start again? And will you rebuke the UK government for its disability cuts, voted for by 25 out of the 26 Welsh Labour MPs, in fact, designed by the Swansea West MP Torsten Bell? And will you call for the funding at all levels, Council, Welsh Government, UK Government, in line with TUC policy, for a needs budget to end what the UN already calls the continuing grave or systemic violations of the rights of disabled people in the UK? Thank you.
It was not the question I was prepared to answer, but I will do my best anyway. And I would like to thank Mr. Golightly for the question. It does raise, a really important issues of national and local concern. I do really want to state as well that personally, I do very much support the aims of Disabled People Against the Cuts. In previous life in 2010, when DPAC was being formed in Birmingham, at that point, I was Secretary of Dudley Trades Council, and we were involved in the anti-cuts campaign that grew out because of the Conservative Liberal Democrat government, which started that 14 years of austerity that you've referred to. I'm very aware of the additional costs that disabled people and their families face, spending more on essential goods and services, heating, insurance, equipment and therapies, meaning disabled people are much more likely to have lower standard of living. Also wanted to highlight, as it's International Women's Day coming up, what the Equality and Human Rights Commission call the double whammy of being a disabled woman in the UK, as the imbalance of power and discrimination is even more acute. Just under half of disabled women are neither employed or actively seeking work. If you do have a job, there's a disability pay gap, in some cases as large as 18.9%. And it also needs to be noted that disabled women are disproportionately at risk of all forms of violence and abuse from carers, partners and people in the community. And women with learning disabilities and mental health conditions are more likely to experience sexual violence. So yes, the impact of austerity, the cuts, as you have said in your question, has left councils to take up the shortfall and increase the pressure on services. So we do share, many of your concerns around national changes. I know the leader, myself, cabinet colleagues always lobby for governments of whatever political hue in Westminster and in Cardiff to ensure that local councils are fully funded for the impacts of their decisions. As the leader set out in the answer to the previous question, savings and efficiencies are just one side of our overall budget package. Unequivocally, even after the 6.6 million mentioned, net cash for social services is being increased by this council by over £12 million. The percentage increase is higher than our funding increase percentage, evidencing we are clearly prioritising social care. I did have some more specific things which were in your original question, but you have not asked those, so I'll leave that there. I can give you a written answer to that if you'd prefer.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbard. The next question is from Mr. Mark Evans, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Mark Evans, Secretary, Swansea and District Trades Council and Socialist Party. Swansea City Council has been cutting its budget and increasing charges to the public and privatising services since austerity began, and this has continued under Labour government. Further cuts to the budget this year, as we already heard, of 12.7 million, will cause further frustration amongst your employees that they cannot provide the services they wish to because the finances and the staff are not there. All evidence shows that investment in in-house services strengthens communities and people are happier and healthier. I want to draw attention of councillors to the previous administrations of the council outsourcing home care, domiciliary care. And this council has outsourced the vast majority of home care to the private sector. No doubt at the time, councillors would have been informed that outsourcing was better value than providing the service in-house. But the cost of social care overall has not reduced. What has happened, and the council are complicit in this, is that there's been a wealth transfer from the workforce of mainly women to the private companies they work for, many of these being internationally based private equity investors. My question is it not time for Swansea City Council, Labour-led council, to put the public and its employees first by taking home care and all other services in-house? An in-house service would have better paid staff, provide a better quality and consistent service that prioritises service users' needs and not the bottom dollar.
Again, thank you, Mr. Evans, for the question. And I know you presented a very similar question at Cabinet, so my response is likely to be very similar. Just a correction, first of all. Obviously, there is a net, as Councillor Gibbard said, a net £12 million going into social care, taking it to a record level of £208 million investment. And actually, we're delivering more care than ever before. That is part of what the model changes and the transformation within social services is aimed to do, is to allow us to deliver more care to more people than ever before, because we've got an ageing population and the demands on our services are greater than they've ever been. So it's right that we put that extra money in, but it's right that we try and make that money go as far as it can to support as many people as we can. On a personal note, and I know it's shared by many in the chamber, certainly on my side of the chamber, we have looked at how we could get to a position where all social care is delivered in the public sector directly by the council. But we aren't funded to do that at the current time, and it would require a significant additional investment in order to do that. But I think, you know, given that we have a health service which is primarily delivered by the public sector, you know, we wouldn't design the system where the care sector was largely in private hands and the health service largely in public hands, because that system and the tensions don't give us the best system, in my opinion, that we could possibly have. But that will need a brave decision, like in 1945, to establish a national care system, a national care service. And I hope we do get to that at some point, because more people are going into care, more of us will live longer, more of us will need support in our later years. And I hope that we do get to that position. But the council does not have on its own the resources to make that change. However, what we are trying to do is to make sure that wherever possible, we are able to provide care ourselves, and that we ensure that the quality of care that's delivered by people on our behalf is as good as it possibly can be. So again, share the aspirations that you lay out, but we don't unfortunately have the resources to be able to make that significant change as much as we would like to.
Thank you, Leader. The next question is from Mel Price, please.
Good evening. Specific question regarding the additional funding being allocated in the budget to support the Kilvey Hill project. Given that the planning conditions imposed on this development have still not been satisfied, critically in relation to the land stability reports, Skyline have got a dire record with regard to land slips, as you know. No lease has yet been signed. Is it not extremely unwise for the council to commit more funds to this project? I think there's already been 3 million spent. with the possibility that the development will not proceed unless you also predetermined the results of the stability report and the signing of the contract, as you did with NRW. Also, the depth of feeling for retaining the designated quiet area status within the locality. Would it not be prudent to ask for upfront sums from Skyline rather than giving and loaning the money to ensure that successful biodiversity improvements are in fact carried out, and the restoration works are completed should the venture fail, or when it is no longer an attraction and when the profits have been extracted? Are we risking making the same mistakes as with, for example, the ski slope and open cast mining in Wales, where the land has been left devastated and at risk of flooding? Thank you.
Again, thank you, Mr. Price, for the question. I think in terms of the presumption that there's something unique about proceeding with a development before all of the conditions have been met, that is not the way I understand the planning application was agreed, or that the conditions are structured. They are phased release of conditions as the development progresses, so conditions will need to be met as the development progresses, not everything being met prior to any start. So that's my understanding. It's not a conversation, Mr. Strider. I listen quietly to your question. Please do the respect of listening to the answer. In terms of the funding arrangements, again, it's not unusual for any nation or authority to seek to provide support for inward investment. It happens in lots of major cities. It happens in lots of places in the UK and around the world, whereby to get a company to invest in your locality, there is often an investment package that is created by governments to encourage that. And I'm very pleased that the Welsh Government are able to provide some money to support the growth of the tourism industry in Swansea. And obviously, as we've said previously, the Council's contribution is matched to the Welsh Government and part of a whole package of investment support with the Welsh Government. Of course, the difference being is that the Council's contingent elements would be repaid in full over the term, which is not the same for the Welsh Government elements. The final part I would say on that is, again, in terms of the suggestion of additional monies, whilst for pure accounting terms the money would look more, they are related to transactional details with other parts of government. And I know members will have had some briefing on this in terms of the confidentiality of the Council's commercial arrangements, but it is not money that is being provided direct to Skyline in terms of any additional costs that the Council would be bearing. It is about the land assembly, and again, given the commercial sensitivity around that in terms of what needs to be agreed, again, the additional sums that are quoted in there are ones that the Council will be recompensed for in part as a result of the arrangements that we put in place. So again, I'm sorry that I can't go further in terms of exact detail on that this evening, because we are still in the commercial aspects, still in the commercial confidentiality aspects of the project. But it wouldn't be right to say that the project costs are suddenly rising and therefore the Council has to find more money to put in. These are related to land assembly and land transaction elements of the project, and again are related to other parts of government and public sector in Wales. So I won't go further than that at this point.
Thank you, Leader. The next question is from Mr. Ben Houghton, please. Mr. Houghton, we are now into 20 minutes of public questions instead of 10, so if you can just keep it brief.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to echo the residential view of the situation of Skyline. I know people don't have all the facts from both sides. So my questions are, Skyline. Oh, and the other point would be like St. David said, look after the little things. And I know this seems nothing in the grand scheme of the budget, but the little things really matter. So I'm going to go into some detail now. Skyline uplift. Appendix C shows Skyline is raising from 8.1 million to 10.2 million. What is the additional 1.1 million in plain terms, and which financial year will this be spent, and what is it for? As we know, the NRW lease is finalised relinquishment, so those costs are dealt with, as you said, outside. This cost is, we don't know what it's for, what's going on, and why it's increasing. Just to make a point.
We'll answer that question first, Mr. Houghton, and then
Yeah.
we might have to give you written responses from there on. Thank you. Leader. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Mr. Houghton. I'll just refer you to the response I just gave to Mr. Price, I think it was. Sorry if I forgot, missed your name. But to the previous questioner, again, I'm not able to go further than I did in my previous answer. But at some point in the future, when we are out of the commercial confidentiality phase, I will be able to provide you with a much broader and much more explicit response.
Okay, Mr. Houghton, you'll have written responses to the rest of the questions, if that's okay, because we're way over.
2.1 million has nothing to do with the commercial lease. So can you answer the question as it's meant to be answered?
Mr. Houghton, you've had the response I'm able to give you, and I can't go further this evening.
Okay, incorrect answer then. Thank you.
Okay,
So
sorry, Mr.
borrowing
Houghton,
costs-
have written request.
Borrowing.
You need to have written responses to the rest of it because the question time is way over time.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Let me go. So borrowing costs. So what is the project's total?
Sorry, Mr. Houghton, I've told you you're going to get written responses. I need to carry on with the agenda. We've got a huge agenda in front of us tonight. We're already 20 minutes well into questions.
You just told me that I
you
could
have
read
written
them through,
responses.
and then you just cut that off. Because you said that I could read it through if I did it quickly, and you said one at a time, and now you're cutting me off.
I said, I've been advised to give you written responses to the next part of the questions, if that's.
Oh, that is interesting. Well done.
Okay, thank you. I'm going by the rules, okay? Thank you. Term is going to be the medium-term financial planning. The section 151 officer Ben's. Yeah, that's what I'm reading.
Yes, it's budget reports.
Oh, it's the budget report, sorry. It's the budget reports for 8 to 15. Section 151 officer Ben Smith will give an overall technical presentation of all the budget reports. Councillors will be invited to ask broad technical questions of the 151 officer. Leader of the council to give a broad budget presentation. This will cover several agenda items and will extend that time as allowed under the Constitution. Following the presentation, I allow questions to be put to the leader of the council, and each report will then be dealt with individually, and the 151 officer will speak specifically on each report, and councillors will have an opportunity to ask questions relating to the report. Okay, so we're going to move on to item 8 then, please, and I'm going to call on Mr. Ben's.
So it's still on the.
Oh, we're still on this.
Yeah.
So Ben is going to come in.
Yeah, we're nowhere near that. We're not still on this one.
Oh,
Absolutely.
we're still in this?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Ben Smith, please.
He's doing the overall.
Yeah, I realise that.
Thank you, presiding member. I won't use many of my minutes on the overarching stuff so that I can save them up for the rest of the reports, as you've said, because you've given me permission to speak on each of the individual items in due course. That way I can speak at length on the ones that need to be spoken on that length, but will be as brief as possible on the others. In terms of my overarching position, I'd like to obviously put on record my thanks to colleagues, officers and members for their help and support throughout that budget process. It kicks off each July and works all the way through and steadily builds up all the way through to the following March. It doesn't all just happen overnight. I would especially like to thank my own staff and the even smaller number of staff who work often ridiculous hours as silly points in the weekends as well to get everything pulled together at the last minute. So I'm incredibly grateful for that. I thought I would comment on a few bits that aren't in front of you specifically tonight because it helps provide context. It's stuff you've either heard from me previously or Cabinet has heard, and on the basis politicians often announce the same thing 3 times over, I shall equally do the same on one item because I'm especially proud of it on behalf of my pension staff. First off, budget monitoring. Cabinet has received 3 quarterly monitoring reports all year, and the position is fantastically good. You don't hear a treasurer normally say that's something that cheery, do you? There are underspends everywhere across every of the core lines, which means there is enormous flexibility likely at outturn, and the leader and I will refer to those in many of the reports before you, in terms it gives you lots of wiggle room and lots of stability. At the Cabinet, before recommending to Council, there was a separate item which recognised that inflation might be headline 3, but in some areas it's way more. Parts of social services are facing 14% inflation increases, and Cabinet recommended to Council to increase the budget further, and those are included in the papers tonight. And that's important when people say, well, why isn't council tax the same as headline inflation, etc. We don't always just buy the same basket of goods, and unfortunately in the last couple of days you've seen that inflation projections may be very significantly disrupted as a result of very sad events across the world. The major item that I wanted to re-announce again, you've heard it here before and elsewhere, is to place on record my thanks to my pensions staff, my head of service, Jeff Dong, for his work on pensions and the work of the Pensions Committee and Pension Board, because the bit that's referenced lightly in the papers but not said that loudly is that on top of all the other debates and discussions about what are savings or efficiencies, is that the enormous get out of jail free card that this council has had for the next 3 years is a discussion with myself and colleagues, subject to actuarial advice, which reduces the employer contributions by 1/3 for this council, £17 million a year, £51 million over the 3 years. It has helped at least one neighbouring council because I provide their pension fund, and indeed all 22 councils in Wales with the 8 pension funds have all made a significant saving on their employers' contributions, which has greatly aided the position, as well as the fact that the final settlement was well in excess of what we originally led to believe was coming. So I wanted to put that on record to thank my officers especially. I'll come back to specific items on the individual reports in due course. I'm happy to take any general questions at this point, but I will equally, as I say, give a preamble on each of the reports for technical advice in due course. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Sorry, Mr. Smith. Okay. Yeah, over to the leader then, please. Yeah.
Any technical questions?
Oh, sorry, but
No, that's right.
technical questions for Ben? Yeah. Can I have anybody got any technical questions for Mr. Smith, please? Mr. Evans is confusing me here, so it's not more of my fault. Councillor Rice. Councillor Phillips, will you stop muttering under your breath and stop undermining what I'm trying to do up here? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify as well that these are technical questions about all of the papers, or are we going to go into more detail at a later date? Yeah? So
it will be the latter, Councillor Rice. There will be an opportunity for technical advice on each report and questions on each of them in due course.
Okay, I have one technical question that covers at least 3 of the reports. So I think it's worth to asking now. I know that you like good imagery and you give good examples, a Section 151 officer. If I was in a time machine and I went back to 2023 and I sat here looking at the budget book, I would have said then that I could see a projection to the end of this financial year, which in band B of the Sustainable Learning Communities programme or capital, we would have spent up to £86 million. I understand, as I sit here today, if the projection for this year is right, which is about £4 million a forecast, we would have only have spent £11 million in that period, which is about 13% of what we projected to do. On what basis is the technical assumptions for forecasts in that capital programme made, and how certain are we going to be that the figures that are in the future will actually come to pass?
So, good question. To some extent, there is a degree of slippage, but you'll be pleased to know it is not driven by slippage to the degree that you might have envisaged. Band B has effectively ceased. We still report it under Band B because it's a residual part of what was Band A and Band B. The whole thing has segged into now Sustainable Communities for Learning, which is a new 9-year rolling programme, and so is covered in there in the majority of cases. So anything that wasn't already live and being worked through rolls over and is rebadged. Even if it were the same school with exactly the same plan, it would be covered under the Sustainable Communities for Learning heading rather than under the old Band A, Band B, because there was going to be a Band C and a Band D. That's gone. It's called Sustainable Communities for Learning, and it's a new 9-year rolling programme, which makes my life rather harder because it's a continuous rolling programme, which obviously transcends every single MTFP. The MTFP only does the following 3 years beyond the budget, so a 4-year window. So there will always be that additional complication, and I'm always thinking about some of the capital borrowing costs that might be associated with that in the latter stages of that programme, as well as what is contained in the MTFP. So that may help explain your concern, Councillor Rice.
Just to clarify, in actual factual terms, though, we did say we were going to spend £86 million by now, and we've only spent 11. So the slippage, I know that their programmes have changed, but it's the actuality of what's spent schools against programmes. That programme, just for clarity, is about large school renovations and new school builds. So it is quite a key programme to the local authority.
Okay. Want to respond, Mr. Smith? Or
No, I have nothing further to add on that, presiding member. As I say, yeah, there is some slippage, but a very large number of items that were in Band B are now captured under Sustainable Communities for Learning. It's not as simple as just imply that 70, 80 million is just not going to be spent.
Mr. Smith, are there any more technical questions? Councillor Pugh. Anthony, sorry.
Can you ask Ben just to slow down a bit, please? I can't understand him.
Councillor Smith, we've got a request for you to talk a little bit slower.
There's a lot to get through, but I will try
He's
and
not
put the
Councillor
RPM
Smith.
beats down a little bit on the turntable.
He wants to go to bed tonight, Alison, so he's going through them quick. Over to the leader for your presentation, please. We're having a problem with the cameras and things. It's locked into Councillor Tribe, so Hugh is trying to sort it out for a minute.
Thank you very much, presiding member. I'll try and skip through these as quickly as I can. Keep the heckling for later, you'll need it. So I just want to begin by reminding members of what I said in the response to the questioner earlier. This is a record-breaking budget, however you measure it. It's record funding for education and schools, record funding for care services, and record funding for police. It also has significant investment underneath that in direct service uplifts. So in terms of the overall investment into services, is around 677 million being spent this year. That's gross an extra 60 million, net an extra 47 million, and around £5,800 per household going in. So again, substantial amounts of investment. Education and schools reaches £240 million this year. That is that record amount, which is an uplift of 12 million. And within that, you've also got commitments on ALN, specifically £1 million this year, potentially rising to £2.35 million in due course. And the anticipation is that the education budget will be over £250 million by the end of this period. In terms of care services, as we referenced in the answers, an extra £12 million going in, taking that to £208 million, which is again a record amount over the £200 million mark for the first time for care services. In terms of funding for communities, there are multiple elements to this. So we've got over £1 million now committed for the ongoing Here For You campaigns, both in summer and winter, and members will know the various elements of that, including vouchers that we have allocated to families, the meals and other provisions that we lay on as a council to help those in need at those times of year when the extra pressures of Christmas or the summer holidays come to bear. In addition, we will continue with the free rides offer, and of course within that as well is the new shuttle operating in and around the city centre. And of course, on top of that are the already announced reductions in fares that the Welsh Government are funding in terms of the £1 single tickets, the £3 ride all day, and the £2 flat rate that is due to come in for all bus travellers. So again, a significant amount of support that lightens the load of the spends of people in our communities. In addition to that, we established funds for both veterans and for men's sheds, and also to assist with road closures that members may wish to have in their wards for remembrance events, etc. So again, those are now baselined within the council's budget and will repeat every year. And again, grateful for the continued work that the Armed Forces Champion does with our veterans, and again, know the work that she is doing with officers to ensure that fund is properly dispersed to those veterans in need. Moving on then to the police services, as I said, a record £101.5 million going into services, and again, a significant amount of different things funded from that. In terms of infrastructure, roads and pathways, and other parts of the programme, this will include the major resurfacing works, patch services, pothole repairs, path upgrades, coastal paths and bridleways, new bay lighting, enhanced drainage works, expanded CWAT teams in communities, expanded cleansing teams, EV charging, residential charging pilot, which is already announced, and of course the Ayres motorhome pitches. So again, a significant amount of infrastructure investment and works in our communities that our residents will benefit from. Also wanted to confirm the position, having spoken recently to Councillor King in terms of the success that Astorva has created in the opening. And again, I commend Councillor King and all of the officers who have worked so hard to see Astorva open. Footfall and demand is significantly up from that which we were experiencing at the old Civic Centre, just proving that the footfall for the Astorva in the city centre is absolutely the right place for it to be. We've also consulted, as you know, in terms of hours of opening of our other libraries and hubs across the authority, and I can confirm that it's our intention not to reduce any library opening hours going forward, but to increase them in those areas that are showing where the demand is most needed. So again, I'm grateful to Councillor King for his work on that. In terms of the Local Growth Fund, so this is the successor to SPF. I'm grateful to Paul Relf and his team for the work that they've done to adopt and manage the funds that are being provided by UK Government direct. As members will know, these are to be managed at the Corporate Joint Committee level, although Swansea does manage the funds for the whole region. And that gives a breakdown there of how we propose to deploy the Local Growth Fund, some significant numbers, but as you can see, they're supporting some significant and important programmes and projects across our authority. And linking to that is our own Economic Growth Fund. As you know, we set aside £10 million at outturn last year. We held back that money in terms of a decision on how to deploy until we knew what the plans from the UK Government were for the successor to Shared Prosperity. That is now known, which means that we can now allocate the money out of our £10 million fund. So 5.5 million will go into a Local Growth Fund transition. So that's allowing us to continue with lots of the very important programmes. And I know Councillor Anthony and Councillor Gwilliam are working hard to ensure with their officers that those programmes continue supporting people in employability in other ways. About £3 million extra is being diverted into highways, specifically into roads maintenance. And again, Councillor Stevens has worked with his officers to make sure we have the capacity to deliver a larger programme within highways. We're also allocating 150,000 to deal with sign replacement. I know members have reported because we had a bad batch of road signs some time ago, which have faded rather quickly. And again, I know we've released the new designs in the press that Councillor Stevens has been working on with officers. So again, there's enough there to ensure that we replace all of the faded or damaged signs and then have a fund going forward to continue with any investment that's required. We also intend to step forward to become a co-promoter to bring larger events to Swansea. You will note that there is a real difficulty in getting events that are taking place in Wales to be placed outside of the capital. That is due to the arrangements with the promoters. And again, very grateful again to Councillor King and David Price-Deer and the events team for the work that they've been doing on bringing together a proposal whereby we can become a promoter, potentially take some of the benefits of any successful events that take place in the city. And likewise, we have a huge and rich amount of local talent in our communities who want to be able to put on events and showcase their talent and skills. And again, we are making money available to support local events across the authority in the coming year. You'll know that our events team also produce a world-class Christmas parade every year. And again, we want to continue to do that, as well as destination events that take place throughout the year in Swansea. And again, it is really setting Swansea on the world stage in terms of a great destination for people to come and enjoy. And then finally, there is a bit of residual money in that, which will be deployed at the next chance at Cabinet in terms of decisions that we intend to make for that final remaining amount. So again, that shows that the Economic Growth Fund that was established last year is nearly fully deployed into those core priorities. Councillor Williams will say shortly a little bit more around the HRA capital investment. And again, we had to throttle back a little bit last year in terms of investment in our housing because of some of the substantial risks that were present. However, now those risks are dealt with, we are able now to bring forward again and increase both the scale and pace of investment in our housing stock. So proposals for 70 million, which I believe is an annual record of investment into housing to be invested, and again, a significant sum, over £250 million over the next 4 years. Moving on to the capital budget, again, significant scale of ambition being shown in our capital budget, and I just wanted to show you some of the highlights this evening. As I said, through the work that Councillor Stevens has been doing with his officers, we propose £12 million to go in directly into roads and highways improvements, including things like pothole repairs, patch and others. And again, it is our intention, Mr Smith referenced it in his introduction there, we are anticipating a surplus come outturn. So if that proves to be the case, then we would seek to provide up to £2 million more on top of the 12 million into highways as a result of that. So again, possibly negating the need to move stuff around later on when we get to items. But that again shows a significant and sustained investment in our highways and roads infrastructure. We've also committed, as we did last year, I believe, to embark on a significant programme of upgrades to our changing facilities. And again, we've been successful in securing grants from Football Association and others to be able to progress that programme of investment. And we anticipate seeing around £2 million being invested this year from a range of sources to be able to modernise our changing rooms. And of course, that's really important because the changing rooms, many of them were built and designed in the days when primarily men played sports. We've got huge growth in female soccer and in rugby, and we want to make sure that our facilities cater for everyone so that they can have the opportunity to play sport in our community. We've also made firm commitments and are well on our way now to starting to deliver the network of skate parks and small wheel sports facilities. And again, around 2.6 million has been set aside for that. Curve have been doing a great job in terms of the design of a number of those facilities, which will be being delivered in members' locations and in wards across the authority in the coming months. Many members are accessing the Community Investment Fund to turbocharge their already enhanced community budgets. And I will remind you that when we came into power in 2012, the community budgets were just £1,000 a year, didn't go very far. We've raised them to £15,000 a year, but we've also created the Community Investment Fund, which allows members to pull forward bigger schemes and match 30% from the funds that they can raise with 70% out of that Community Investment Fund. So, and that has proved really popular. I know a number of members are very proud of the things that we've been able to help them fund in their wards, and that will continue. But this is also to try and address some of the challenges that members might have in terms of increased costs, in terms of quotes that come back again, so to make sure that we don't hit any buffers in terms of not being able to deliver the aspirations of our communities. And again, that one is likely to be a decision for outturn in terms of the allocation. I'm also grateful to Councillor King for the work that he's been doing around our commitment on a new COVID memorial. As you know, we gave that commitment during the pandemic that we would take the opportunity to recognise all those who had given dedicated service or had lost loved ones or lost their lives themselves as part of a permanent memorial in Swansea. I think the design is fantastic. I'll show you a little bit more on the design in a minute. And also this location on the seafront will be one I think will give real prominence to the COVID memorial as part of the existing memorials that we have along our seafront. And I'm grateful to both Councillor King and Councillor Wendy Lewis as Armed Forces Champion for the work that they've been doing around a memorial walkway. And it's our intention to enhance that entire stretch of the promenade to make it a full remembrance space, not just for people who lost their lives during armed conflict, but those who also lost their lives during the pandemic. And I think that'll be a fantastic addition to our promenade. We invested heavily a few years ago to deliver on our commitment to light our fantastic world-class bay. And that is now lit all around from Mumbles right to the slip bridge. But that piece between the slip bridge and the marina remains unlit. And we're very pleased to be able to say that we intend to bring forward £130,000 of funding to complete the lighting from the slip bridge to the marina, so that people who use the promenade can do so safely all year round. And again, it's just a further enhancement of our wonderful bay. Just a quick update for you in terms of the capital projects. We are continuing to work with Urban Splash in terms of Porth Copper. So Porth Copper or Coppergate is the name for the area where the current St David's car park is, that runs from there up to St Mary's Church, the Minster. And this is a visualisation of the enhanced plans in terms of how the various blocks potentially will look around St David's and where the current St David's Centre is. So again, just wanted to share with you that that is going on. Obviously, the public sector hub is one of the first interventions in that space. Castle Square Gardens, a really important space in our city centre. Works are already on site and will continue for the rest of this year to deliver that fantastic new green space in the heart of our city centre, with play fountains, new planted gardens, a new jumbo screen for public events and sporting events, summer cinemas, as I said, play fountains for children, and 2 new commercial units likely to be restaurants, ice cream parlour type assets within the new Castle Square Gardens. Our market is the jewel in the crown of the city centre, and again, Councillor Hopkins has been taking forward works and agreements around new entrances to the market, and again we'll be delivering those this year, which will again not just enhance the entrances but the access into the market themselves from all of the various entrances. So again, a real helpful addition. This is an enhanced photo of the proposed COVID memorial, which is due to go on the seafront. I believe Councillor King will correct me if I'm wrong, but the spheres there are set around 2 metres apart, an important reflection of the distancing that we had. And of course, the glass that is used in those spheres is a reflection of people having to meet either side of the glass, loved ones often during that period. So there are lots of really nice, innovative callbacks to what we all went through in COVID. And again, I think it's a perfect opportunity for us to recognise those who either lost their lives or lost loved ones or served so importantly during that period. I mentioned the public sector hub a couple of minutes ago, and again, Cabinet will be asked in due course to begin the process of starting the development of this site. This is important strategically in terms of everything that we are proposing to do with the Civic Centre site, with Urban Splash, because we need to ensure that our staff are able to move into a new base, which will be part of the space in that public sector hub. And obviously, we're talking to both UK and Welsh Government about their being located in that space. There would also be retail space on the ground floors. But again, as we've done with the Storva, putting government functions in the heart of the city centre to have the most economic impact they possibly can. And of course, that will allow us then to proceed with the redevelopment of the civic site in terms of the plans that we've started to release to the public. I've left deliberately, because it remains in the capital programme, the St Helens redeveloped stadium. It remains in our capital programme, and again, I want to be clear, that money is ready to be released as soon as the WRU sees sense. Right, so as soon as the WRU come forward and give us 4 licenses with 4 clubs, and the Ospreys being a regional professional side with a long-term future, that money will be released. So that's why it remains in the capital programme, and they should not delay making that decision, in my opinion. We had debate earlier about the Skyline development, but Skyline is just one part of the overall strategy for the River Corridor. As Robert Francis Davis would say if he was here tonight, we turned our back on the river for too many years. We've spent a huge amount of time now making that space usable again. We propose to put new river walkways in there, and of course, okay, there's echoing coming through. Yeah, we're okay. So we propose, obviously, to put new river walkways in, but this is also about the restoration of the historic buildings along the river corridor. And of course, this will supplement the already open Penderyn Whisky Distillery Visitor Centre. But it's also important in terms of how everything else that we are taking forward is linked together. It's not linked together financially, but it is linked together strategically. And it is important that we don't pull out a block that then prevents us realising the overall aims of our economic strategy for the city. I mentioned the Civic Centre, the waterfront, and again, Urban Splash and ourselves have released some of the early imagery, which will show the Civic Centre site being redeveloped with retail space, restaurants and other along the ground floor, and then residential apartments above overlooking the world-class bay. We also have had initial discussions with the aquarium operator, and they are looking at 2 options at the moment. One to incorporate the aquarium within the building, the other to do a new build for the aquarium nearby. But again, it's that clustering of the arena, the National Waterfront Museum and other attractions all in a row. And of course, I know Councillor Gibbard is excited by this one, the saltwater Lido pool being established on the bay. They are very popular in other locations in the UK, and I think it'd be a great addition to the offering that we have here in Swansea. And you know, that's really great, because we've learnt through the arena. The arena is now fast approaching its 1,000,000th visitor. And again, I know there were concerns across the chamber about would people come? Is it the right thing to do? Is it the right thing, the right size, the right place? The answer to all of those is yes, because 1 million people have already told us so. I wanted to give a quick update on the Metro, because again, we had the announcement from UK government for £14 billion worth of investment in rail in Wales. And of course, part of that, if you dig through the document, is around the South West Wales Metro. So again, we're very keen to begin formal consultation on that element. We're talking to government partners at the moment about whether or not that can be squeezed in before the PERDA, or whether there is an opportunity for us to do that. But I think given that Transport for Wales have already done a huge amount of work in terms of the design of the stations, how people would travel back and forth, the frequency of services that people would see in their new local stations, I think it's important that we do now take the step of sharing that detail with the public so that they have a chance to understand what the transport enhancements could be for their area. And I think it's important that people recognise the Landor, it would be the first station within that new metro. And the reason for that is because with Skyline being there, you know, 450,000 people will want to be coming to that attraction every year under the business plan. We hope they don't all come by car. It'd be great to have them coming by rail or other sports. And of course, this is just part of the public transport revolution that we're taking forward with Welsh Government, where we're going to be taking on franchising from 27 for the bus services. So, but in terms of rail, you'd go out from Swansea High Street Station to Landor, up to Winchwen, over to Llansamlet, and then the train would then do a figure of 8 out to Skewin, out to Neath, back in through Llandarcy, back to Llansamlet, over to Morriston, near Morriston Hospital, to Felindre, to Pontflew, down to the Bont, back into Llanelli, then back through Gowerton and Cocket, back into Swansea. And that would be a circular route run by the metro operators. And just in terms of the work that's already been done in terms of what would that do to local services, so you can see on the slide when it flips over, sorry, there's a bit of a lag on the screen online, but essentially it takes the high street trains from 4.5 trains an hour to 10 trains an hour every hour, so 10 trains an hour, so more than doubling the amount of services coming out of Swansea High Street Station. Oh, sorry, don't we go back one? Hang on. No, these are real trains, not tram trains. These are trains that run on rail tracks. Yeah, so for tram train is for up the valley in some of the Neath elements, because it would be uneconomic to put additional lines up through some of the valleys communities. So I think that's frozen, is it? Let's have a look. Oh, hang on. Sorry, Teams is running slow. Well, interesting you should say that. I know we've had quite a few questions in of late on the ferry, but I just wanted to say I was doing a bit of digging, and obviously our aspirations working with Dave Sampson and his team, who are naval engineers, are working on the design of a fleet of hydrogen vessels. Obviously, there's an opportunity for roll-on, roll-off, turn-up and go services. Passenger services on their own would probably not be viable. You would need to have that transport element, and that would produce some huge savings, both in time for us to get from South Wales over to southwest of England, but also saving a lot of fuel being burnt and congestion around the M4. So actually, there was, this has been backed before, and prepare yourselves for this one, because I really chuckled when I found this one. Sorry, Chris. This was actually an article from 2008, where a certain individual who was looking a lot more suave in those days is on record quite rightly as saying a passenger link to Devon would be a fantastic opportunity to boost tourism in Swansea. So at one point, at least, Councillor Holly did support tourism in Swansea. So, and I hope when we come to the amendments later, you will continue to support tourism in Swansea, because I think that's important that we do that. So I just want to come back to the summary then, coming to the end now very quickly. In terms of the budget itself, the council tax proposed increase is 3.9%. Will be closer to 3% when you strip out the fire levy. As you know, that is part of what we collect. So we don't get as a council the full value of 3.9%. It will be the third cheapest or third lowest rise of council tax in Wales, and the two councils that are setting slightly lower council tax levels than Swansea are significantly more expensive in cash terms in terms of the level of council tax that they set. So in terms of us, that works out at about just over £1 a week for a Band B property in Swansea, and obviously Band A and Band B are the most numerous properties that we have, so that's what the majority would pay. So again, very low. And it is in stark contrast, because I mentioned reform earlier. This is the report from Worcestershire Council. So having promised that they were not going to raise council tax at all, and they were going to really take money out of services, they're gone. Well, no doubt they're gone. No doubt they're gone. But this is the reality of what a reform council means. It's a council tax that's nearly 3 times larger than we are proposing to place here. And if you look at the highlighted part there, awarding the authority 59 million in emergency support to avoid it becoming effectively bankrupt. You know, reform haven't been in charge very long, but look at the damage they've done. And anybody in Swansea considering voting reform should reflect on this, because this is what the reality of a reform run council means. So if this flips over, which I hope it will. So I said, third lowest council tax rise in Wales. That leaves us nearly £300 a year cheaper than the independent run Neath Talbot Council just over the border, and over £100 cheaper than Plaid Cymru-led council in Carmarthenshire. So it really is true that Labour charges you less and delivers you more. We remain below the Welsh Council average for council tax, and we are likely to continue to be significantly below that average in due course. Gee, you've obviously been looking at my slides, Councillor Holly. So I'll skip over the Welsh quickly for us to move on to the last but one slide. And you are right. So, you know, absolutely right. Oh, Chris shouldn't be there on his own. Let's give him some friends. I think that was the day that that was the day after election, Chris. I think. There we are. There's a couple of friends from the Uplands Party. And again, we've got to remember that they were all one happy bunch of Lib Dems at the time. And just before the 2012 election, as you'll know, they decided to push forward with a 0% council tax against advice. And, you know, you cannot, well, there's lots of people advising you at the time. I'm sure there's plenty of advice. Yeah. So on this one, it's important, because when we have debates about do we have enough money, this has a long-lasting effect. So in 2012, it reduced at least 5 million. It took at least £5 million out as an average council tax rise from the council coffers. By 2017, that had meant that the council had not been able to realise £26 million of investment it would have got. By 2022, that had risen to 55 million. And by 2025, last year, that had raised 73 million. Now, this council would have 73 million pounds more to invest in services, to provide investment, to support local businesses, to support local communities, had the gimmick not gone forward. But, you know, I'm just reminding people of the facts and the history of what others did. No, I'm nearly finished, Chris. One more. Thank you, Councillor. You'll have a chance to respond in due course. So in closing, I'm very, very pleased to be able to stand on behalf of the Labour administration and put forward this budget. I'm grateful to all of my cabinet colleagues and all of my colleagues in the Labour group for the work that they've been doing to make sure that we're able to bring this forward. I'm also very grateful to Mr Smith, Sarah Willis and all of the team in finance who work diligently to work through the wee hours to get the budget together. It is a budget that gives us record funding in education and schools. It's a record funding care service, record funding for place, all of the time when we're setting the third lowest council tax rise in Wales. So thank you, Presiding Member.
We'll allow any broad questions for the leader. Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald.
I'm just wondering, Chairman, why you quoted Band B. It's normal when you're comparing costs to always go on Band D. Now, Band B is a much lower one, so it looked good, £1 a week or £1 a month, whatever it is. But Band D is what you should have been using for comparative purposes.
So Can use band D if you wish, and yes, you are right. We do use that in terms of the league tables for Wales, and that's accurate to what I've said, which is we still remain below the average for band D in Wales. I reference band B, as I said, because we have the most numerous properties in Swansea are in band B and band A, so that is a reflection of what most people will pay. But band D is used as an average comparator across Wales, and we do very well on that measure also.
Councillor Tribe.
Councillor Leader, sorry, fantastic schemes. You can't fail to be impressed, but they seem to be focused on the city centre. They seem to be focused on the city, better on the in the city centre. Any plans for development in the suburbs? And with my ward hat on, I've got to say I'm a little bit disappointed at Felindra and Swansea Northwest, including Gosainen and Pentlegare, seem to be neglected with the metro scheme. I don't know where you can link the two answers, please. Thank you.
Councillor Tribe, I think, yes, there are obviously major projects in the city centre because that is the economic engine of the region that we live in. So it's obviously going to get more investment than would ordinary wards because it's a city centre. But actually, your ward will have benefited from the 15,000 community budget, the community investment fund schemes that you will have applied for, the new play areas, investment in roads, investment on a number of fronts directly into your ward. In terms of the metro, of course, there is a station proposed to be at Felindra. And that is one which has a long history. Alan Kens, when he was Secretary of State for Wales, promised £20 million for that area, which never materialised. But it is a key part of connecting the metro up. So Felindra, which is very close to your boundary, will see a station established if the metro is delivered in the form that it's currently being proposed.
Thank you.
Councillor Holly.
Just a question. You said that the council lost or are not having 73 million. Do you begrudge the people of Swansea having that money? Do you begrudge the public of this city not having to pay that? Are you saying that that was wrong? Are you saying that those people whose council tax wasn't increased don't deserve that? So are you saying that that 73 million you want to get back? You should have had that, and what? You know, at the end of the day, a decision was made to give the public a break. Something that I'm afraid you seem to have lost out on. So I'll ask you now, do you think that the public don't deserve to have that money?
It's a very odd way of looking at council tax and council funding. I think it would be a point that you could stand on if it wasn't for the fact that the previous 7 years that you were in power, you chose to raise council tax every year. It was just the year before the election that you altered your position. So, you know, it was clearly a gimmick, but more importantly, it was a gimmick that didn't work. People saw through it, and we know what the result of the election was. What I would say is, look, as politicians, we are here to deliver services for the people of Swansea, for better schools, for better care, better roads. Whatever the people of Swansea rely on has to be funded, and part of that is making a sensible decision on council tax. Voters understand that, which is why, and we understand that, which is why this year we are proposing one of the lowest council tax rises in Wales.
Councillor Black.
Thank you. I just want to ask, when you took power in 2012, if you chose at that point to increase the council tax by 5% more than you actually did, how much extra would the council have now?
I know you always like to raise council tax, Councillor Black, if you can, but suggesting that we would actually raise money that you failed to raise, sort of belies reality. We set, on the advice of our finance officer and others, what we thought was an appropriate rise in 2012, as we did in 2013, 14, 15, and that's what we do in every year. I've yet to hear any Section 151 officer or finance officer say it's a good idea to have a 0% council tax, especially, I think in the year inflation was well above zero. It wasn't a zero inflation year. So it's not a sensible position to take.
So why didn't you vote against it?
Believe against it, and I believe we abstained, I think, at the time. I will need to check the record.
Didn't vote against
Okay,
it, did you?
okay. Councillor Evans, please. Councillor Chris Evans.
Yeah, thanks very much. One thing that that hasn't been brought up this evening is actually highways drainage. Given that we're going to be experiencing wetter weather due to climate change, if there is any extra funding at outturn, could we look at highways drainage for that funding so people's homes can be protected from the awful weather?
There was apologies. There was a reference within the slides. I know I skipped through them very quickly for additional monies to go into drainage and to assist with drainage schemes across the authority.
Councillor Jeff Jones. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Jeff Jones. It's been sorted. Okay. If there's no more questions, then we're going to move on to the next item, and that's item 8, and that's the medium-term financial plan. Can I go back to Mr. Ben Smith, please? And on request, Ben, can you talk a little bit slower?
Thank you, presiding member. I will attempt to talk a bit slower. You might, given we're about to only start the first main substantive item, be here for the next 8 hours. So I will be as brief as I can on this one. The MTFP is a set of planning assumptions. They are only that. There is a 1-year deal from the current Welsh Government, so everything that Mystic Ben is reading in his tea leaves is entirely blind to what may or may not come to pass after the Senedd election. I am guided by what is set out by the Institute for Fiscal Studies, the Office for Budget Responsibility, and the UK Chancellor's update only this week. The outlook remains tight going forward. There is only potentially a couple of percentage points in public funding due for the rest of the current UK Government Parliament. That may change. The other point I would wish to make is that my assumptions have remained remarkably steady. I didn't change the MTFP last year or the year before. I am still conditioned at inflation around 2.5%. Bank of England updates and others indicate that that trend line was looking very positive, down to about 2%. There has been some disruption in the world in the last couple of days, regrettably, and assumptions are that inflation may go up a bit. That will impact upon the basket of goods that households pay in CPI. As I've said before, what we pay for goods is different to your average household, and that's why it's a bit of a false comparison to always just compare council tax against headline levels of national CPI inflation. The assumptions are critical and key. Given that there is likely to be limited funding, that does result in a planning assumption for council tax accordingly. But for the last couple of years, we have seen settlements for this council of 4%, followed by 5%. And as a result of that, plus the pension savings and others that I've referenced previously, we've been able to make sure that services are significantly invested into when the refresh happens each year. I would draw your attention in the report to my assumptions around borrowing. This will be a common theme through some of the more technical reports later on. We have a strategy of sit and hold. I have not borrowed a significant penny since 2021. I've taken advantage of some very low cost or zero rate loans from the Welsh Government, but I have not borrowed since 21 when I borrowed at 1%. We are now facing near 6% from the PWLB, and set out in the report is very clearly in the MTFP a need for new headroom of £50 million. That is the planning assumption through the MTFP, the revenue budget, and the capital budget, and the capital strategy, and the treasury management strategy. I emphasise that because my current assumptions and certifications over the adequacy of reserves and everything else is predicated on that £50 million being used over the next 5 years. I hope it isn't used in the next 5 months or the next 5 days. I reserve my right to be very independently minded as your Section 151 officer and to comment accordingly if needs be. As I say, it is a planning assumption. I don't think I need to labour the points. I'm more than happy to take technical questions on the assumptions in the report as to what may or may not happen. There's only the one recommendation. It's probably more important that we move on to some of the meatier items on the agenda, presiding member. So I have nothing further to add on this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Can I have somebody to propose it, please?
Move, Chair.
Seconder?
Happy to second.
Okay. Any questions from Mr. Smith? Okay, we go to the vote then, please. All those in favour of the report? Any against? Any abstentions? Okay. Okay, thank you. Now move on to item 9. Sorry. Pardon?
Put your mic on.
It's just been. Okay, we're now moving on to item 9. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we need to have a break shortly. Do you want to go have the break now, or do you want to do the next one first, or whichever way do you want to do it? Do you want to have it now? 10 minutes? Yeah? Okay, we'll just take the 10. Okay, everybody, we move on to item 9 then, please, and it's the revenue budget. And I'd like to call on Mr. Ben Smith, please. Thank you.
Thank you, presiding member. My technical advice on this one will be the longest of the evening. I will try and do it as quickly as possible, but not too fast. 2 recommendations in front of you. Much of the report is self-explanatory around, as it stands, a 3.9% council tax increase proposed. Many of the items are in bold to emphasise the points. Some I will repeat just for emphasis, but have already been touched upon this evening. Paragraph 4 does emphasise it's 60 million in, savings of 13 just under, out, net 47 million pound add. I do try to put it in bold to make it clear to readers, but people choose their own ways of putting a spin on things. Paragraph 15, I'm pleased to report the Chancellor's update on Tuesday was, from my technical officer point of view, nice and boring, no surprises, no white rabbits, so nothing for me to run around and move the Velcro with. The position hasn't really changed. The growth fairy's gone on holiday for another longer period of time. It may come back in due course, according to the IFS, Office for Budget Responsibility. That's why I didn't need to change anything in my advice to you on the medium-term financial plan. I still advise that the outlook for the longer term is challenging, in paragraph 18, also in bold. To guide you, in paragraph 26 in the following table, I put in bold and italics things that have changed through the various iterations going to Cabinet on the 9th of January and then the one in February. The important items to draw your attention to are as I referenced, the major reduction in employer pension costs. Not changed, but still major. So I'm going to announce it for the 3rd time. As I say, that's what politicians do. That's what your Section 151 officer is going to do this evening. There is a change to the central inflation provision. I have now reduced it down to nothing more than the apprentice levy. I will come back to inflation because that might concern you given the uncertainties in the economy. I am obliged to reflect the final allocations and advice for the various levying bodies, and that's why those change. The contingency-based sum is unusual this year. It includes 5 million being held centrally as a hedge against the risks around equal pay capitalisation directions and future capital spending, which I'm sure will come up again during the course of this evening. As capital is expended, if decisions are made in due course by the executive, because it will be a cabinet function if the council's capital programme is approved, then there will be a need to remove it from contingency and add it to capital financing, because very much the deferred borrowing approach is going to need some borrowing externalised sooner rather than later, as is set out in the Treasury Management Policy Statement. So that's the purpose of the table, to draw you through the main items. The position is set out clearly in terms of schools, and I anticipate that will still be one of the highest cash increases for schools and one of the highest percentage increases for schools. We start from a position of relative strength compared to most authorities in terms of our reserves held by schools. The rest of the report sets out in normal format everything that you would expect, analysed 101 different ways. Paragraph 77 and table 3A emphasises and tracks through all the changes made since January, and in paragraph 78 the changes that were agreed at February Cabinet before recommending to you this evening. My statutory duty is to consider the level and adequacy of reserves, which are set out in paragraphs 115 and beyond. I still maintain that general reserves are at the low end, given the size of the authority, but as the leader alluded to earlier, That is partly because specific reserves are on the highest side and higher side of most authorities in Wales. The assumptions set out in paragraph 118 onwards give the rationale for why my officer advice to you is that council tax be increased by 3.90%. In terms of drawing your attention to the risks and issues, page 78, paragraph D, as labelled inflation, I have removed most of the central inflation provision. That may concern you given inflation was trending down and it might tick up again. I will just give you a flavour of the reason why I'm relatively comfortable with that. As you're aware, energy prices have gone up significantly and could be a factor on household bills and potentially others in due course. Fortunately, we pre-buy much of our energy, so for assurance, we have currently bought 100% of our anticipated electricity needs for the whole of 26-27 already. There should be no inflationary impact for us. I'm not quite so successful on the gas side of things. Only 91% has been pre-bought, so there is a modest risk on an element of it because there's a final month to be bought. The risk is if there is a prolonged spike in energy costs and it goes beyond the following year, because at the moment I would not be looking to buy any energy for 27-28. I draw attention to care home fees. I referenced earlier, up to 14% increase is required in some areas, and we are at risk of challenge from providers. In the Section G, I have to draw attention to equal pay risks. A number of councils have been faced with substantial equal pay claims, and we are not exempt from that risk. And that is part of the reason why I held money in contingency as a hedge for any future capital spend that might require borrowing, or capitalisation directions for such risks that may also require borrowing. I give my views as to the adequacy overall in the report, and on page 80, I still modify my section 25 assurance, which is my statutory duty in respect of your use proposed of the capital equalisation reserve. This is the second year. I told you off last year, I'm going to do it again. The capital equalisation reserve was set up to smooth capital. A decision was taken, understandably so, to keep costs of council tax as a result of reducing revenue down. So I'm satisfied the amount is modest, but it is the second year on the trot. And if you spend it for the purpose it wasn't intended, you draw my capital equalisation reserve down faster and force me to borrow externally quicker. That's the only reason I'm giving you a mild telling off. As I say, I'm very independently minded. And then in the following one, in terms of the section I, around national insurance, last year we were faced with Mystic Ben's guess as to what we might get directly in terms of recompense. That risk has gone. I estimated 7, we got £7.1 million. The issue we have is no other bodies were compensated, and we see that in some of the supply pressures and charges we are facing. So it is still explicitly modified as a result of that risk, because there are spillover effects in the economy. I have decided at this point not to modify it in respect of the equal pay risks, but only if the material £50 million worth of capital borrowing headroom and the contingency sum is available for the bulk of the medium-term financial plan. I reserve my right to change my view on that in due course if something happens, or if the spend is faster than I would advise is appropriate. But I accept I only give advice. Members decide on the matters. The rest of the report, in all of its annotations and appendices, set out the usual assumptions. I don't think I need to labour the point further. I've given my advice on the statutory elements. You are invited to consider this report and ask questions on me, but also, presiding member, you will be aware there are amendments which will need to be considered as well. So I will hand back to your good self. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Any technical questions for Mr. Smith, please? Councillor Black.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Given that you've made provision for electricity and gas and the increase which is inevitably going to happen there because of what's happening in the Middle East at the moment, there are of course going to be other knock-on effects from those fuel costs going up in terms of supply chains and in terms of services the council buy in. Do we have enough money in the budget to manage that situation if it starts to escalate in any meaningful way?
Thank you, Mr.
So although I've drawn down central inflation, and as I've said, I've covered our own position, that's a perfectly valid question. There are risks. There is still a budgeted core provision for contingency each year, And as I alluded to, there is likely still to be a significant balance one-off on contingency at outturn as a result of the budget monitoring throughout the year. So I am satisfied there will be sufficient combines between what is rolled forward one-off and what is in the base for at least the following year for those spillover effects outside of ourselves. It will need to be addressed again when it's reviewed the following year if those pressures persist for a long period of time and the further spillover effects. But in the short term, I am satisfied for those two reasons, Councillor Black.
Thank you. Councillor Will-Thomas.
Thanks, Presiding Member. I just want to ask a question firstly on, it's good, sounds very good news that we've bought the energy for the next 2 years. I'm just wondering what the mechanism is that. Is it your role as 151 officer to purchase that? And do you just go out to the market? Is it standard that we look 2 years in advance, or did you do it because you, saw a good deal? Second question then is what possibly justifies I think you said 14% rise in care home fees in 1 year? Is that all down to the national insurance increase, or is it something else? Thank you.
So to clarify, I buy a year forward on a rolling programme, so I've bought for the whole of 26-27. I use the word I loosely in terms of collectively all members. To be fair, Jeff Bacon, as the head of service, holds the remit for the energy buying team. They do take advantage of a recognised Crown supplier. Many councils will be in the same position as us. We are on the wholesale markets and many will have bought. We've got choices over how long and what type of contract, but many will have bought for the first year ahead. The same happened with the energy spike after the outbreak of hostilities in Ukraine, where it was much more material, the increases. We were okay for the first year, but then I had to put significant sums in for later years because it persisted for a significant period of time. On the second one, there is a recognised model around care costs. There can be debates over what's in or not in terms of some of the rentier elements. One of the questions from the public was around that in terms of the private sector provision and how much is for financing the equity and loans in the businesses that tend to be care home providers. A large amount of it is national insurance, but it is also the increases in the national living wage and national minimum wage. It's not for me to pass judgment on the rationale for each of those items. There are obvious reasons why they would have been chosen to be done, but it is very likely that the impact of the threshold increase plus those wage increases in what are typically lower paid roles with part-time workers will have exacerbated the pressures that the care home providers are facing. And we strike a delicate balance. We've got a 5% plus funding increase, a 3% odd council tax increase, and I'm good, but I can't fund 14% out of fresh air. I am satisfied that the figures are justified, and that is why Cabinet was advised and did top up the budgets in February and are reflected in these papers. But they are undoubtedly partly affected by national insurance, the real living wage, national minimum wage, and other elements of how the market is constructed. I probably won't say any more because political choice and policy choice, but I have to face the reality of there are a number of things that cause that, and it's particularly exacerbated in what are routinely part-time, lower paid roles. Councillor.
Okay. Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Ben, going back to the MRP, when is it going to be the tipping point from a benefit to a negative, if I can call it that? Have we got some sort of time span when that is? It actually says the medium term, but when is the medium term coming to an end? Pardon?
So the current medium term comes to an end by 29-30. The initial tipping point of it being a net gain to a net cost at the margin is nearly upon us. The bigger risk is the fact that I've been able to sit since taking all the debt in 2018 at 2% and 2021 at 1%, is that as the capital equalisation reserve is drawn down, If additional headroom is approved by council later tonight, which results in me having to go out and borrow more, and I will want to draw your attention to the sums in the Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Policy Statement, which indicates debt externalisation is coming, the impact of the minimum revenue provision on those elements would be much more material than any swing between what was a gain and a not a gain on the MRP review. And then it's turbocharged by the fact that I'm not going to be borrowing at 1 or 2%. I'm currently facing borrowing at 6%, and if I'm lucky, high 5%. So those pressures are coming, Councillor Jones. I'm more worried about them than I am about the theoretical tipping point when I set it out, when I gave the advice to change the MRP policy a few years ago, because I think they will be much more material than the flip itself. I've always maintained I would expect to get through to 2030. But clearly I've already had to move and indicate there needs to be some additional external borrowing. I do not like the rates that are on offer, but I may not be able to dictate the timing of that. You give me permission to borrow when I see fit, and I can only work with what I've got at the time at which I have to do it. I will defer for as long as I can, but the Treasury's policy statement makes clear I am likely to start externalising debt soon.
Okay, thanks for that. So it's shall we say a little bit of time left before we move into a negative. Further down, actually, on in the paragraph, you actually mentioned about using the capital.
Sorry, Chair, could the councillor speak up?
We can't hardly hear you, Councillor Jones, sorry. You're very quiet, if you can speak.
Am I very quiet?
Yeah.
Oh, that'll be noisy. Further down the paragraph, it actually mentions about the use of the capital equalisation reserves to top up the revenue budget. And you've actually said about the Section 29 assurance, once again explicitly modified and qualified by the 150, but it should be discouraged from being the routine norm. So when is that norm actually going to come to an end?
So that was my polite code for saying it's come to an end. I am very unlikely to give officer advice that would enable council to consider it for a third year. I've been using the capital equalisation reserve to use free cash flow to avoid borrowing. Given later on I'm going to be indicating I'm going to have to borrow, I am unlikely to be able to give future officer advice that it is acceptable to me. So you are all in charge, but it's likely to be unacceptable to me that you use capital equalisation reserve for keeping revenue costs down. It should revert to only being used to smooth the capital costs. I understand why it was done in 25-26. I understand why it is likely to be done again tonight, because you have the substantive motion and there are no amendments proposing any changes to the use of the capital equalisation reserve, because it does reduce bills in the short term on revenue and reduce council tax bills. But it is my polite code for saying that's your lot, in my humble opinion.
Okay, Councillor Peter May.
Thank you. I mean, this does relate to revenue. I noticed on the Treasury Management report there is a jump from in 2026 of the liability being around 500 million. Is that right? On the graph, and that's going to jump to around 600 million in the following year. The question, first of all, really is what is the impact going to be on the revenue budget with all the interest being paid? There's your link, and what sort of term are we looking on these loans? Because I notice a lot of these loans that we've currently borrowed at cheaply at 1.9 or something %, wasn't it? Don't mature until the 2070s. And obviously, the longer term that you use from the table below, the higher the interest rate that you pay. So are we going to be locking generations again by extra borrowing into rates of 5%? And when's this borrowing going to stop? When we're going to start repaying?
So the later reports plus what is referenced will not directly impact any further on the revenue budget, which is the item we're on at the moment. There are pressures in the MTFP. There are stepped increases in capital borrowing costs into revenue for each of the years through the medium-term financial plan, partly as a result of unwinding the deferrals to date, partly anticipating further borrowing to come. and indeed that money that's held in contingency, which if the capital headroom is used by the executive in due course, assuming the £50 million is approved later tonight, that there will be a need to externalise it. You are absolutely right. The current yield on the Treasury gilts, and that fundamentally drives pricing for the PWLB, are back to more normal times. Longer term borrowing is normally more expensive. I took advantage in 2018 and 2021 of unusual circumstances where it was frankly cheaper to go long than it was short. Today, I'm not planning to do it today. I will have to externalise some of it. At the moment, the worst time to borrow over is a 30-year period. That's where the peak really is. 30 to 50-year money is not great. Short term, 1 to 5 year, 5 to 14-year money, some on a maturity basis, which is what we normally use. I may have to consider the two alternative options, especially equal instalment of principal, or the annuity method. I know it's all a bit technical gobbledygook, but there are important distinctions because there are price advantages on some of those items. So there are pressures and burdens coming. I was always waiting for the base rate to drop to 3.5%. I gave consistent advice since 2018. I wouldn't go back in again after 2018 and 2021 until it hit 3.5%. Notwithstanding, it is less likely that the base rate will hit 3.5% at the middle of this month. I think it is still likely. The problem I have is because the long-term yields are now back up near 6%, it's not only a UK problem. Japanese gilts have increased, a whole raft of others have as well. I will want to defer for as long as I can. And if I have to borrow any money, same as any other treasury in Wales, it is likely to be for the short-term period, 1 to 5, 5 to 14 years only, and then have to refinance it in due course, simply because it's utterly unattractive to take the long-term money that is on offer at the moment. In the meantime, for all the bits that have been secured, I am at least pleased that most of it I got long till 2070, as you rightly say, and I will be laughing all the way to the bank for the rest of my life at that 1% borrowing.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Leader.
Thank you. Just a quick couple of comments to Mr. Smith in terms of the advice, and I'm very grateful to him. And again, he continues to be a very prudent and sometimes lucky treasurer, as he says himself, in terms of being able to lock in that long-term borrowing at less than 2%. And again, Mr. Smith, the pool rate has reduced over the period of the last number of years, I think from above 6% now to below 4%. If you were forced, and I know you will continue to do all you can if we give you the headroom to make sure that we continue to take advantage of the lowest possible rates, and as you said, that might be shorter term borrowing. But a couple of questions from me. One, if you were to externalise £50 million at 5.5% or the mid-high fives, as you said, what does that do to our overall pool rate? Would it take us back above the 6% rate overall, or would it be more minor than that in terms of hitting the pool rate? And secondly, in terms of Councillor May's point around leaving debt for future generations, was borrowing taken out at more than 6% during Councillor May's time as a administrative cabinet member?
So on the first one, yes, you're absolutely right, Leader, that we end up with a priced pool rate. We'll come on to it later. I think from memory, without skipping hundreds of pages forward, the current pool rate is 3.54%. So you do yourself a disservice. It's not under 4, it's very near to 3.5%. If I had to do 50 million at 5.5%, it would get you it probably wouldn't even get you back past the 4% mark. That is the advantage of pooling the money. So it will be nowhere near going back to 6%. You were right to reference that when I embarked on this strategy, shortly after being appointed as a Section 151 officer, the borrowing pool rate was 6%, and I swapped effectively 400 million at 6% for 600 million at 4%. The interest cost is exactly the same. So it was free cash flow, effectively. As I say, it was sale of the century, cheap as chips. We both thought it. There have been debates in this chamber for years. I couldn't believe my luck, and then I got super lucky on top. And you'll always be grateful for a lucky treasurer as much as a lucky general or whatever else I'm meant to be. Rates were borrowed at a level above 6%. I'm going to tread carefully because it's only fair that I recognise that other Section 151 officers before me and other administrations had to consider the rates of borrowing and interest rates that were prevailing at the time. So I shall probably say no more than that, other than recognising the point you've made and concur. But I would, in fairness, recognise that base rates were a heck of a lot higher and the market rates were a lot higher too. So to some extent, you can make some of your own luck, but you can also only work with what's available at the time there. That's why I'm not a politician and have to be as evenly balanced as possible. And hopefully, I think the Chamber will accept that I've been even-handed in my technical advice on that matter.
Very diplomatic, Mr. Smith. Okay, can I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Okay. Okay, we've had two amendments to the revenue account. So the first one, I believe, is Councillor Mary Jones. Are you proposing? Or Councillor Holly?
Yes, leave the room, please.
Okay. Are you leaving for both, Chris, or just one? Okay.
You would definitely want to leave.
Exactly. Thank you, Councillor Holly.
I would. Okay.
Thank you.
Can I?
Doing it now.
All right, well, go on in. Thank you, Presiding Member. I'm sorry for the confusion, which is normal anyway. We wish to pass. We wish to put an amendment in with regards to car parking. As you all know, there is a major issue. We've had some terrifying and horrible news about our city centre, and a lot of the policies that have been put in about the free parking, limited parking, and the buses, etc. I firmly believe we've got to do more, because we've got to do more, because our city centre is deteriorating, and we've got to do something about it. It's all well and good saying, oh yeah, we'll do this, we can do. Let's have some positive action. Let's use the growth fund and let us say, let's come and have some free parking. I know it's difficult, and nobody's saying it's easy, but let's have some free parking. Let's look at looking at how we can carry on and how we can use our assets, the surface car parks, the multi-storey car park, and let's find a way of bringing back the people into the city centre by doing something about this parking. Because if we don't, we'll keep on deteriorating. Now, all the good work that's been done, the arena and the various other things that have been put into the city centre will fall. Because let's be blunt about it. People want to park right next to the counter. They don't, you know, I'm very surprised we haven't seen drive-in grocery shops locally. There are some around the country. So I'm asking this council to take the bold step about getting more action on parking. Thank you.
Can I have a seconder for the, please? Happy to second? Yeah, I want a seconder first and I'll call you in. Sam, you seconding it?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second the motion. I completely agree with what Councillor Holly's got to say. Businesses need footfall back in the city centre, and then they need the support by reducing parking charges, allowing people to come into the city centre, providing greater access for shoppers, and give it and naturally putting more money in the back pockets of people in order to spend on our city centre. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Leader.
Chair, before I can I come in on a point of order?
Yeah.
Both the mover of the motion and the seconder have referenced reducing parking charges or offering free parking. That is not in the motion. So again, I just want to check that the motion's in order, because there's an amount stated in there to offset an increase in parking charges, which quite surprised us because Cabinet haven't made any decision to increase car parking charges. So, and now there is a suggestion that the money be used to reduce car parking charges or to make them free. Again, given the tariffs that we have in place, I'm not sure that the amount that's stated here can achieve the aims of the motion. And I don't see any evidence or modelling underneath it that says that that can happen. So what has been proposed is inconsistent with the word in the motion. So I would like some advice as to whether the motion is in order, please.
Yeah.
So, presiding member,
Can you point us out where you've seen it in the budget report? Can you point out where you've seen it in the budget report?
I will clarify it. If you will pick up the paper, I will read it out to you. Obviously, you know, we propose that the revenue budget economic growth fund, it create a subject outturn position being favourable to use the deferred increased car parking charges in the city centre for the year to support the city centre. Now we already know there's been there's going to be an increase because you've already published it. And if you look in the
where is that?
If you put it in, if you look in the budget book,
Yeah.
there is an increase in car parking charge.
No, there's an increase in fees.
In
Sorry,
fees.
there's an increase in income. There's not an increase in charges.
Well, how are you going to get the income? Are you going to have more car parking charges? But the reality is, it is about.
Happy to address that point in the debate, but can we deal with the substantive point I've made here? Because it's about, I would welcome Mr. Smith's advice in terms of there's been a clear statement made to reduce car parking charges or to make car parking free. All I'm challenging is that is not what's written down. And I don't see, because when we look at any car parking tariff changes across the city, we have to model that with parking services. We have to understand the impacts on that. I don't believe what's written down here reflects what is being proposed.
Okay, Mr. Smith, can you clarify, please?
so my view is that the amendment, it can only count against the item which is £200,000, which is listed on page 88, which references that there is an annual review and updating of pricing tariffs for car parking of £200,000. I am content that £150,000 is less than £200,000. And in that sense, the amendment could be moved in money terms. I think the point the leader is making is it clear as worded in the amendment, is that giving effect to what is stated? I am satisfied there is a sufficient sum available. The leader's point is it as worded and understood by members as to what they're giving effect to? So I'm satisfied the amendment stands in that the £150,000 can be moved, because there is a clear budget line that it could be removed from, but that is a different matter to the wording that the leader has referenced. So my view is it is in order, in amount. I accept the leader's point of clarification, and this for the opposition to satisfy members that what they're proposing is to give effect to that. But there is a clear line in the budget that could be gone after, to put it bluntly, for the amount of £150,000 as proposed, is my view.
Leader. Okay.
Yep, I'm grateful for Mr. Smith's advice in terms of a budget line in there of 200,000, but that budget line will have modelling underneath it. Again, part of the decision that Cabinet would be subsequently asked to make would be around tariffs, potentially the additional income, because obviously we've got a new car park opening in the city centre shortly, which again will no doubt change the amount of income that the council is receiving. So there isn't a direct read across here to a specific tariff, and that's my concern. So what is being actually proposed by this motion? What tariff are you proposing to reduce? On what day? For what hour? If it's free parking, when are you proposing free parking? And can you tell me what the cost of your specific proposal is?
Okay.
The additional car parking that you're proposing is in place of the one that you're going to pull down. So don't stand up and say, oh no, there's additional parking. You are dismantling St. David's car park in due course, but what the difference is between them, I don't know. You might know, But how can we know? Because you don't tell us anything anyway. So the bottom line is you are closing one car park and opening another. So don't say there'll be additional car parking, because over the last few years, we've taken car parking away to build things, and that's understandable. So what would we want to see? We don't know. If we say, oh, we want car parking X days free, that's a decision for the cabinet, I'm afraid. What we are saying is the total amount of money we want to see taken out is that 120 odd thousand or 150,000. You set the fees. All we are doing is setting the quantum. That's what we are doing. What we are asking you to do is to go back and look at that 200,000 and reduce it to 50,000 a minimum, and look at how you would then model that within that figure, because it is pointless us saying to you, oh, reduce a car park, because we wouldn't know until we had the breakdown from yourselves in the cabinet what you were going to use that 200,000. So what we are saying is the quantum is 200,000. You want to increase it by, we want to reduce it by 150,000. It's that simple.
Again, Chair, I still remain unconvinced that Councillor Holly has a basis for the changes he's proposing, because that 200,000 there could easily be accomplished by increased usage of the car park. It could be there could be an overlap between the opening of the new car park and the closure of St David's. There are all things that can change car parking. If you can tell us which tariffs you wish to change on which days and how that it will be funded from the money that's there on how many days. If you haven't done that modelling, then it's very difficult for us to take a view on that. What I can say is the Cabinet and the administration remain extremely aware of ensuring there is a low-cost parking offer in Swansea, and that there's a consistent offer with outlying areas of the city as well, because of course we want to ensure that Mumbles, our coastal car parks, and the entirety of what we raise from car parking through tariffs is fair and equitable across the county. So again, I'm not hearing anything that's specific here to say how you're going to address this, because I don't know. I mean, would have to go to the parking officers. I don't know how quickly free parking in a location would burn through 200,000. I don't know whether your thinking is to do it for an hour each day or for an entire week at some point in the year. It's really, really unclear. So look, I would be more than happy to have further discussions, perhaps through scrutiny or whatever, around car parking charges, tariffs and the modelling. But the way this is written, it is unclear. But what has been said in both moving it and second it has added a significant amount of additional confusion to what you're actually trying to achieve here.
Of this in your budget book. The wording is increased charges to, oh sorry, we've got the wrong one. Annual review and update pricing tariffs for car park. All we are asking you to do is that £200,000 to reduce it to 50,000. Now, if you find that too hard to do, no, genuinely now, if you find it too hard to do, I will come in and spend the afternoon and show you how to do it.
Please don't threaten me like that, please.
With respect, Leader, it's not rocket science. I'm not asking you to put anything on the moon. I'm not asking you either to do a very difficult thing. Reduce 200,000 to 50,000. It's quite simple.
So, to help Councillor Holly with this.
Oh no.
So look, let's go for the wording, because I think the wording is carefully chosen in this. Annual review. So we review car parking tariffs every year. That's sensible to do. And updating of pricing, not increasing of pricing, but updating of pricing tariffs for car parking. And within that, again, I don't want to prejudge anything that Cabinet might be asked to consider, but within that, there are opportunities for free parking to be implemented in certain areas, for us to change the current tariff arrangements in certain car parks. All of those things could happen, but that there potentially could represent income. It could also represent a change in how we raise tariffs because we've got more capacity. There are a number of things that could lead you to that figure. By saying, well, you don't want 50,000, you could actually be saying, well, we don't want extra capacity for parking in the city centre, which in itself could be economically damaging for people wanting to visit the city centre. So all I'm saying is I think it'd be easier if you withdrew this motion. We had a sensible discussion about the sorts of interventions that we were making and allow Cabinet to bring forward some proposals that you will be able to scrutinise properly and feed into as part of a review for car parking and tariffs across the city and county. I think what you're proposing is so vague, it's unsupportable.
With respect, Leader, it's not going to be withdrawn because it's very simple. If it was any simpler, it would be in the dandy. You know, let's be blunt about it. This is Peter and this you know, this. Well, if I found it in the Janet and John book, it couldn't be any easier. You know, I know that you're trying your best to get to make it look foolish and all this. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. That's your role. Even though you failed dramatically. We just asked you to reduce 200,000 to £50,000. It's that simple.
Councillor Lyndon Jones, did you wish to speak? Did you wish to speak as a group leader? No. Yeah, but we're going to the group leaders first. You didn't wish to speak. Okay, right. Should we go over to Councillor Rice is going to speak on behalf of Peter May? Yeah.
Thank you. I think I can clarify this. It's quite straightforward. And the reason I'm speaking in favour of the motion is Rob has actually come up with a really good idea in terms of an economic growth fund, which he says 10 million. There was an element of it left over, a residual. What this motion asks you to do is to literally think about using some of that residual, 150,000, to reduce any potential increases in parking tariffs. Straight and simple. I don't think it needs brain surgery to be able to understand. I would suggest that everybody in here knows that supporting the city centre in this way is probably one of the most cost-effective ways of doing things, and a lot better than probably the £200 million we spent on other things. This is going to work for people, and this is what people want. They want reduced car parking charges or charges not to go up by so much. Simple. And the money's there, it's obvious, and you haven't spent it yet, so this is an idea for you to spend it. And another thing I would say, potentially while you're there spending the money, there's loads of good stuff in your idea for your 10 million growth fund about supporting businesses. Welcome, great. There's a bit of the residual left over. I'm just using a bit of airtime to ask this. There are some businesses who are really struggling out there at the moment because they've been affected by things like sinkholes and stuff like that. We haven't supplied them with any supporting finance, so perhaps you could spare a few £1,000s off the 350 that's left over.
You're off the subject now, Councillor Rice.
But the reason I'm speaking to support this motion is clear, it's simple, and it's to support the people of Swansea and businesses in the city centre.
Councillor O'Brien, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I would just like clarity on page 88, as there seems to be much confusion in the room. But it does say about increased charges and income from the Marina and Nabrock. Obviously, we're keen in Nabrock, given it's in our ward, in line with market conditions for 3 years. So can the leader confirm if parking charges in Nabrock will be increased? And also, while I've got the floor, it's just to say I don't support his comments that there is fair car parking charges across the city and county of Swansea, where Mumbles do pay the highest rates. And there's 14 suburban car parks which are free of charge, which I don't disagree with. But it would be nice if there was some discounts towards Mumbles businesses who, one recently has closed its, or is going to be closing its doors recently. So it would be great to have some support there.
Should we come back in, Leader?
Chair, it's a motion debate. I don't think it's for me to answer questions in a motion, but I'm more than happy to make those points in response when I get a chance to make my contribution, if that's okay.
Problem. Okay, thank you. Councillor Black. I've got you down, Councillor Phillips. I have told you about 5 times now.
Thank you, Chair. I think listening to all the sides here, there is a common agreement that we all want to do our best for the city centre. We want to encourage people to go in and spend and to make up for the fact that Marks and Spencer's is leaving us, and we need to get footfall in the city centre. And to do that, I think there's common ground that we need to encourage people to not just use public transport, but to be able to park there and to drive in if they need to, particularly in terms of the disability pay parking spaces which are in place, and try to not put in place obstacles to that particular activity. Now, when I read this, and Robert's made this clear, that the Cabinet is at some stage going to consider the whole of parking policy in terms of the city. They're going to look at the city centre, they're going to look at the areas outside the city centre and come up with a policy which hopefully is going to achieve those aims. The issue is, of course, that in doing that, they're going to be asked to save £200,000. And what we're saying is, if you only have to save £50,000 as opposed to £200,000, then that takes the pressure off. You're able to do much more in terms of providing incentives for people to go into the city centre. And for that reason, Chair, I think it's valid that we should support this amendment, because by reducing the amount of potential saving from the £200,000 to £50,000, then that means that the Cabinet has much more leeway to deal with that issue and to review parking policy accordingly. And that's why I'm supporting this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, can I make one point of information if I can? Because I think this is perhaps where the public were also a little confused with the appendix, because the heading on the column is savings. But when you go through the items that sit underneath it, some are income generating changes. So they reflect an increase in income by doing things differently. So again, Councillor Black, just as a helpful, hopefully, clarification, you should not read every line in there as a direct saving or a cut in the budget. It is not that.
Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a simple soul. If a motion is not clear, if it requires explanation as to what it means, then it doesn't say what the movers intend. If there are no proposed increases in car parking charges, this motion is not affecting anything. The way the motion works is that the officers if this is passed, the officers would take this back and would work on that motion. What were they supposed to work on? You've explained what it is you mean, but your amendment doesn't actually say what you think it means. It's talking about reducing things that haven't been increased. I would ask the legal officer to say that this has to be invalid. I don't think anybody disagrees with the sentiments behind what you're proposing. And the leader has suggested to you that you withdraw the motion, because there are going to be discussions about how car parking charges in the city centre and across the city are going to be looked at in the future, and join in that debate. Because the principles you're talking about are ones as a city centre councillor I would fully endorse. But I have to say to you, your motion doesn't say what you think it says. And I wouldn't be able to support it, even though I do agree with the sentiments that you expressed. I also don't quite understand the point of action, effectiveness, that your amendment proposes. But you say it only happens if the 25-26 out-term position becomes favourable. Who's going to determine what favourable means and at what point? You haven't got that in your amendment. If you want people to vote for it, you have to explain what the trigger point is that makes the situation favourable. None of that is in here.
Councillor Phillips,
I would ask you
Mr. Ben Smith has explained this to you, and that it is a legal proposal. I can't move from that. It's not. It's a financial thing. Councillor Mr. Smith has said it's acceptable, so I can't argue with that.
With respect, it is a very simple notice of motion. As an amendment, very, very simple. You can complicate it all you like, and you can, leader. You can complicate it all you like. In your paper, in your budget, you were saying an increase to 200,000. Right? You can word it any way you want to. It's not savings. 200,000, and we're asking you to make it 50,000. It's as simple as that. Now, we either vote on that, or I'm not withdrawing it, because I think it's genuine in as much it's been through all the legal officers, it's been to the account, accountants, they all agree with it. Now we've got to vote on it.
Okay, we've had a good debate in this. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bill Thomas, sorry. I forgot you, sorry. Apologies.
Sorry, no problem. Thanks, presiding member. And I just want to get back to the motivation for the motion in the first place, and thanks to Chris for putting it forward. I think everyone in the chamber is very passionate about the city centre, and I'd like to congratulate Cabinet for a couple of things which I think are really good. The entrance to the market's going to be fantastic, I'm sure, and the Stover's great. We got a lot of motivation by Welsh Government for active travel, a lot of work being done on buses, but people do still want to use the car. They want to drive in, they want to park, as Chris said, really close to where they're going. We've got competition from places like Trostra and Morva and lots of places like that. So we need to compete with that. Swansea needs to thrive. The car is part of Swansea thriving for a good while yet, until we've got electric cars running everyone around the place. But I fully support this motion, and as Councillor Rice said earlier, I think it would be great value for money. Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you, presiding member. I don't intend to debate the amendment at length because I don't support the amendment because it's too woolly and it's not specific enough. However, I will reference that yesterday, Councillor Anthony and myself went to a Storva and we noted 1,600 people every day going into the city centre, increase in footfall in the city centre, showing that the strategy works. I don't believe that, as Councillor Holly has referenced, that free parking does anything other than to encourage staff working in the city centre to take up the public's parking spaces, therefore not shopping in the city centre and spending money. That is a concern from me. But what I would suggest is that we wait for the parking policy. We leave the suggestion as it stands in the budget this evening, and we wait for the parking policy where we can have proper scrutiny, proper debate, and look in detail at our car parking strategy and therefore the car parking charges.
Councillor Williams. Leader.
Thank you, Chair. My previous interventions are obviously on points of order and clarification. Like Councillor Williams, Councillor Phillips and others that have spoken, it is incredibly difficult to support the motion as it's written. And as I've said before, given how it was moved, it doesn't reflect what's written down. So, we never bring reports or motions ourselves that aren't clear. If the movers of the motion or the people that wrote it, whether it was Councillor Rice that wrote it or Councillor Holly, I don't know. I think Councillor Rice seems to know a little bit more about the detail of it. Whoever wrote it should have been clear to say, we want to reduce this on this date or these days to this. And we want to have a promotion that runs this, this and this. That would have been clarity for all of us to say, okay, that's sensible or it's not sensible. We know, for instance, and this is where the concern comes in, we know the advice through BID and others in the city centre and through the city centre traders is free parking doesn't always help. Because as Councillor Williams has said, it can often lead to people filling out car parks and taking spaces by people who work there, contractors and others, who would otherwise, those spaces would otherwise be used by shoppers. In addition to that, we've asked BID, we've asked the traders, market stalls and others, what sort of offers are the best offers for them? The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is really easy to communicate. It's a good, understandable offer, but also where we've layered over other parking promotions previously, the 3 hours free at certain times of the day or week have been ones that they've supported. Coming back on Councillor O'Brien's statement, well, the coastal car parks do benefit from winter tariffs. That is something we consulted on, and that is already there. It's a built-in promotion on that. And of course, what we have tried to do with the local members is to discuss ideas that they would have for tariffs in Mumbles. And I've not yet had an alternative tariff model other than could we just have free parking for Mumbles. We explained, and the technical officer's advice on that was that the car parks are already at capacity. All you would be doing would be offering free parking for something that is already full. So again, more than happy for members to feed into discussions around tariffs. As I've said before, there are no current proposals the Cabinet have approved to increase car parking tariffs. We do have a review every year. There are things that the Cabinet and members may want to see included in future tariffs across the city, but that is a matter for debate. This motion does not do that. It's very vague. It doesn't give us something that says that's what we're going to do and that's how it's going to help. So I understand the intent, absolutely share the intent, and no doubt we will come forward in due course with some proposals that members will have a chance to scrutinise and to feed into, but we cannot support this amendment. It's meaningless.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Presiding Member. No, just a point of clarity. We have actually gone back to you, Leader, on some options of that, but you shot them down in a hail of smoke. So we have gone back to you on stuff like a half an hour free parking for residents who just want to pop to Mumbles. So we have gone back to you, but it was rejected.
It's under consideration.
Councillor O'Connor.
Yeah, just to also mention that we have gone back a number of times and we've talked about the half-an-hour option, and that was supposed to be going to parking committees that would happen once only in the year, and we still haven't heard, and that was going back a few years ago now. Thank you.
Member, can I just say that's exactly the point I've made, which is there isn't a proposal that we have at the moment of Cabinet that we can bring forward, but we are intending to hopefully, subject to a review, be able to bring some options forward in due course. That is not the same as assuming we are suddenly going to bring forward increases in parking tariffs. And I think maybe the person who wrote the motion misread the line in the budget book.
Short. Yeah.
The last time we had a similar line in a budget, we saw dramatic increases in the city centre car parking. We saw the issues that happened in, I think it might be called Arena Car Park South, where we ended up with a day's parking costing more than it would in Covent Garden and NCB car park. Yeah, so I think that's why we're a little bit worried, and that's why one of the reasons that this has been put forward.
Okay, this has been debated. I'm going to go to the vote now. Okay, so
Okay, thank you, everybody. I will read your names out, and we're talking specifically about item 9, the revenue budget, and specifically amendment 1, which you've just been debating. So if you just say if you're for, against, or if you're abstaining. Cyril Anderson.
Against.
Alison Anthony.
Against.
Matthew Bailey.
For.
Meyer Baker.
Against.
Sam Bennett.
For.
Patience Bento.
Against.
Peter Black.
For.
Jan Curtis.
Against.
Adam Davis.
Against.
Mike Day is not here. Phil Downing.
Against.
Ryland Doyle.
Against.
Mike Dirk.
Against.
Kerry Evans. I'm guessing he's gone. Councillor Chris Evans.
For.
Mandy Evans.
Against.
Tony Fitzgerald. Rebecca Fogarty.
Against.
Nicola Furlong.
For.
Louise Gibbard.
Against.
Fiona Gordon.
Against.
Kevin Griffiths.
For.
Healy Gwilliam.
Against.
Joe Hale. Terry Hennigan. Victoria Holland.
Against.
Chris Holly. Beverly Hopkins.
Against.
David Hopkins.
Against.
Linda James.
4.
Oliver James. Oliver James. Gone. Yvonne Jardine. Alan Jeffrey.
4.
Di Jenkins.
Against.
Jeff Jones. Lyndon Jones. Mary Jones.
4.
Matthew Jones. Susan Jones.
4.
Sandra Joy.
4.
Sarah Keaton.
Against.
Elliot King.
Against.
Hannah Lawson.
Against.
Mike Lewis.
Against.
Richard Lewis. Wendy Lewis.
Against.
Paul Lloyd.
Against.
Michael Locke.
4.
Nicola Matthews.
Against.
Penny Matthews.
Against.
Peter May.
4.
James McGettrick.
4.
Francesca O'Brien.
4.
Angela O'Connor.
4.
David Phillips. Cheryl Philpott. Jess Pritchard.
Against.
Sam Pritchard.
Against.
Stuart Rice. Kelly Roberts. Bridget Rowlands.
4.
Robert Smith. Andrew Stevens.
Against.
Rob Stewart. Graham Thomas. Okay. Will Thomas.
4.
Mark Tribe.
4.
Gordon Walker. He's online. Gordon? Nothing. Leslie Walton.
Against.
Mike White.
Against.
Andrea Williams.
Against.
Andrew Williams.
Against.
Okay. So the amendment is lost and the vote was 26 for, 38 against with no abstentions. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Leaving first. Can I ask those online to put your cameras on, please? Thank you. Okay, we move to the second amendment then, please. And who's proposing this? Is it? Councillor Black, is it? Or is it Sam Bennett?
Thank you, Chair. Just a relatively simple amendment looking to, looking to reverse any reduction in time for people in receipt of domiciliary care. I've got a grandfather who's got dementia, and I know firsthand the difference having time to have for him to get the care that he needs, and the pressure and the pressure that puts on the family when trying to get the care that they need. My grandfather recently was recently in hospital for a number of weeks because my grandmother wasn't able to feed him properly, and therefore having more support around him would have made a big difference. He doesn't live in Swansea. In fact, he lives in England, so wouldn't be affected by those changes. But I understand the principle of what it means when you haven't got the care that you need and the difference that makes to people who have to look after loved ones. So I think we're just looking to we're just looking to give people the time that they need so they get dignified care that they, whenever they're looking, whenever there's a need within a family or for an individual. Thank you.
Have a seconder, please. Okay. Any questions, please? Sorry, Sue.
Thank you.
It's been a long night.
I would like to second the amendment with regard to social services reduction of service hours, increase of client charges with the present cost of living situation is concerning. This will put pressure on unpaid carers, affordability and commissioned services. The knock-on effect for businesses will have a detrimental effect on employment in Swansea. So please support this amendment to protect vulnerable people and their unpaid carers and not add to the risk they already experience. Thank you.
Councillor Gibbard.
Thank you. Yeah, I fully appreciate where the sentiment behind the amendment is coming from, and obviously we would love to have unlimited funding for our care services, which are so important, and they are transformative for for many people's lives and their carers. However, I think in this case, these savings are not just in isolation about cutting the hours or cutting care. It's actually the savings are part of our transformation programme towards our new target operating model. We simply can't continue as we are, just providing more care. It's not sustainable, to keep that model going, and it's not the best thing for people either. So what we are doing is right-sizing existing care packages where people's circumstances might have changed. They might need less care, they might need more care, or might need a different type of care. But more importantly, heading off the need for home care by investing in those early help and prevention services, which are going to allow people to remain independent for as long as possible without that recourse to managed care in the long term. So obviously no one who needs care is going to be without it. We have fantastic staff in our common assessment point and our social workers and our alternatively qualified staff that are really working to get the right package of care for people that need it at the right time. And that's not always managed care. It can be services in the community, support for carers. I hear what Councillor Jones is saying about increasing care costs for individuals. In fact, our modelling shows that the increasing in client charges isn't going to make that much of a difference to a lot of people, because obviously the Welsh Government still hasn't lifted the cap. All of our packages are means tested and have a full financial assessment, and we always look to help people maximise their income wherever possible. So obviously, whilst I completely appreciate the sentiment behind the motion, I can't support it because it's part of our wider transformation programme.
Councillor Rice.
Thank you. I'm speaking in favour of this motion because to me it's quite logical and straightforward. It looks like we're looking to cut 3% of the care that we give to people. And in a sense, what we're doing is heaping on more work onto people who are already under stress and pressure. And that can't be right. And that doesn't feel very Labour, if you ask me. So in terms of this, what we're looking to do is to give more work to people, which could potentially lead to more stress, the possibility of more people being off. We're already hearing that people don't have enough time with people when they go around for care, and we're putting more pressure on that. Okay, if it was a simple economic argument, I could understand, okay, well, that makes sense. I can save 250,000. What normally happens in these circumstances is that you get other costs appearing. People will appear in other parts of the system. They'll appear back in hospital, or they will appear in a much needier circumstance in the future. I just don't think there's any great logic to this idea, and that is why I fully support the idea. And I think that the reason I suggested it comes out of the contingency as well is it is almost an investor save. You want to be able to provide this service for people. Okay, you can reorganise things. I hear what Councillor Gibbard's saying about reorganisation, but this is literally telling me I want to put more work into certain people's already hard work time, and I want to give less time to the people that need support. It doesn't make sense.
Any other, Rob?
Thank you, Presiding Member. I think As Councillor Gibbard outlined, and Mr Howes has been at the Chamber several times to talk to us about the target operating model, about the planned changes in social care. And as I said earlier, there's a significant uplift of £12 million going into care service this year, but it's being directed differently. And again, I think there's a misreading of the entirety of what we're trying to achieve in social care. It's about delivering more care, and it's about delivering more care earlier so people don't need more expensive care later on. And that means changing how we allocated the resources we've got, but at the same time, increasing the allocated resources, but in a planned way. Now, I have sought technical advice on the amendment, and the advice is that whilst no department would ever turn down more money if it was being made available, this would not provide the sort of programmed investment that would be helpful to social care, because it is a one-off sum. And again, as I've sort of had debate with Councillor Rice previously, investments in strategic change in a one-off nature does not